is the book club for kids.
The book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids podcast.
It's a bonus edition of the Book Club for Kids. Hi, I'm Kitty Felde. If you heard last week's show, Spy School, you heard part of a conversation with writer Stuart Gibbs. What you didn't hear was the wildlife encounter in the middle of that conversation that stopped both of us in the middle of our tracks.
Oh my gosh, that is a marmot.
Coming up, Stuart Gibbs shows off his knowledge of the groundhog family, and we talk about how a Hollywood agent was the one who first inspired him to write for kids.
If you heard like a sonic boom that day, that was me smacking my forehead.
This is the Book Club for Kids. We were lucky enough to talk to writer Stuart Gibbs when he was visiting Washington, D.C. The conversation was recorded in my car, which was parked in a construction zone across the street from Nats Park, the baseball stadium on the river where the Washington Nationals play. We started by finding out what brought Gibbs to our nation's capital.
I really love doing research. It's one of the best things about writing because you just get so many ideas that book reading is like reading books and magazines is fantastic, but actually going into a place and walking around and seeing it is it brings 10 times more ideas, 100 times more ideas. So I'm here doing some research. The first book in the series took place here, and it's where the spy school is, so I decided that it would be kind of fun to set kind of an action adventure that took a little bit more advantage of Washington, D.C., and use some of the iconic places in Washington a bit more to my advantage and have some real fun here. So that's been sort of walking around, taking tours of places, looking for where a really interesting place for an action sequence or 2 or 3 might be. And oh my gosh, that is a marmot.
Or is it a beaver?
No, it's not a beaver. It's a woodchuck. In Colorado, it would be a marmot.
I know, but they don't. It might be a marmot. There's another one over.
That is ridiculous.
So odd.
I
thought it was just a big rat, and then I looked.
No, that's like it's a woodchuck. I mean, that is amazing. This is. I don't know if this makes it an interview, but we're here in a construction site, the natural habitat for the woodchuck, and we're right by National Stadium.
There he goes. He's moving.
Nope, he's on the move. Right. And he's going actually through a turnstile.
He can't make it work. He doesn't have the paw strength to make the turnstile work.
Right. That is there you go. Right.
Here he comes.
He actually used the turnstile. That is beautiful.
Now, if you're wondering what a marmot or a woodchuck looks like, check out our website, bookclubforkids.org. We'll have a picture or 2 up there. But let's get back to the conversation with writer Stuart Gibbs, who, by the way, is no stranger to the neighborhoods around Washington, D.C.
From age 5 to 7, I lived just north of the city. My father, he worked at Walter Reed. And so I did see all the great places in D.C. This is a great city to be a kid in because everything's free and your parents can take you pretty much whenever you want. And so I knew a lot of these places. And I think you get a little spoiled growing up here because you're like, oh, yeah, all zoos have pandas and don't cost anything. Or you can always just walk right into the Natural History Museum. So I did know some of this. But even when I thought, well, there's going to be a spy school, it just seemed like it would. This is where all the spy stuff is. I mean, the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and everybody, they're all here. So it just seemed like this made sense that you would have your spy school here. And then I did know enough of the city. And I have a lot of friends here, too. So this is a great city to come visit. But the first book sort of happens mostly around spy school with possibly using one major monument in Washington as a set piece. There's a scene inside the Washington Monument. That is based upon the fact that at some point in my life, I was here on vacation. And this was not when I was a kid. I was an adult. And I went to the Washington Monument. I was the first person in the morning with a bunch of other people. This is before you had to get tickets ahead of time, whatever. And we went up to the top. And then the ranger said, okay, who wants to walk down? And I said, oh, me, I want to walk down. And so he let me walk down through the Washington Monument, and I saw what it was like inside the Washington Monument. And then years later, I was already working on this scene for spy school, and I went to the Washington Monument with my family, and I said to the ranger, can we walk down? And he said, no one's ever been allowed to walk down. And I said, no, that's not true. I've walked down. He said, that is, no, there's no way. We've never let anybody walk down ever. And I thought, well, but I did it. So how did that even happen? So I have walked down inside the Washington Monument. I think my institutional memory is older than that park ranger's. So, but yeah, so you have these experiences and you build books around them at some point and say like, okay, I know what the inside of the Washington Monument looks like, so I'm gonna do a scene there.
Well, have you ever heard from anybody either at the CIA or the NSA or any of the other intelligence agencies in this city since the books come out?
No, it's actually a little annoying to me because I really want somebody to reach out. I don't want them to reach out in a bad way and be like, hey, you have to stop this. But I think that they would have a sense of humor about it, and I would think somebody might want to actually say, because my bet is honestly that they're going to say, you know what, it's even crazier than you can possibly imagine, and let me share some stories with you. But nobody has done that.
Well, and maybe the fact that they haven't contacted you is verification that there actually is a spy school someplace.
That might be. I never thought about that. That's probably it. There was something funny about the idea of combining everything you hated about school and everything you hated about the government in one institution. Because kids love the idea of making fun of the government. That's one of their favorite things. But that's really more a joke for adults. And then the kids know that. I kind of thought like, well, if you took everything you hated about school and then said, oh, and on top of that, occasionally somebody tries to kill you, it doesn't sound so good.
Now, you said you didn't really start out to write for kids. But how did you decide, or how did somebody sort of focus you back in that direction?
I really did think I was going to write for adults. And I would have ideas every once in a while. Somebody would say, well, that might be a kid-friendly idea. But even, say, Belly Up, I originally thought that was told from the point of view of an adult, that one of the zoo vets would realize that the hippo had been murdered and would start investigating. That was when it first sort of came up in my head. That was what I thought. And then it was really an agent from. I was repped by I had a film and TV agent, and somebody from the book division called me up and said, had I ever thought about writing middle grade? And it seems so obvious now, but it was obvious in that exact moment when she said it, but there if you heard like a sonic boom that day, that was me smacking my forehead with such force. And then I said, oh my gosh, wait a minute. It doesn't have to be an adult investigating this in the zoo. You make it a kid investigating in the zoo, and it's a perfect crime for a kid because you don't have to say, why is this kid not going to the police? He can call the police and say, the hippo's been murdered. And they'll say, that's not murder, that's hunting. So, it just worked out perfectly. And then I'd known there was something funny about doing something about spies, and the moment they thought, oh well, I just make it a school for spies, and I can all my jokes still work. So it was sort of the realization that I had a lot of ideas that would work, and also sort of the revelation that it was just the level that I knew I'd be comfortable writing at.
Well, it surprises me how clear being a middle grader still is to you.
Well, I think that there's sort of these truths about childhood and middle school that are kind of universal. A lot of people will say to me, like, boy, there's a lot of bullies. And I said, well, in middle school we had that was a big fact of life. It wasn't necessarily you're being bullied, but there was the threat of being bullied, and it seemed like middle school was sort of the time when the teachers. Like, nobody was happy. The teachers didn't want to be there. The students didn't want to be there. Felt like I was a pretty good kid, and I seemed to be getting punished all the time for things that I really didn't understand why I was, like running in the halls. Like, they would say, you can't run in the halls when you're an adult, and that's not true. You're completely allowed to run in the halls as an adult. If you're late for a plane, you can run through the airport. There's not a monitor that says, hey, slow down. You're going to hurt somebody. But they're enforcing rules that aren't rules anywhere except for middle school. I don't necessarily try to write like really rebellious kids. I just try to write kids who are kind of like questioning why all this is happening to them at that time.
In Hollywood, writers are probably near the bottom of the food chain as far as respect goes. But talk about the difference to the way that your readers react to you? Are you like a superstar?
I do have fans. I didn't go into this for more respect or fans or anything, but it's some nice icing on the cake. Because if you write a movie in Hollywood, as a writer, they just kind of, what sells the movie is the director and mostly the actors. But when you write a book, what sells the book is you. And I didn't even realize that was the case. And so, they want you to do more books, because the more books you have out there, the more shelf space you have. And people rarely, unless they think they're screenwriters, say, oh, this movie's written by somebody else who I like the movie they wrote before, so I'll go see that movie. But that's how people look at books. They say, oh, I like this person's other book, so I will read more by them, which makes sense. And so the interaction, not in a like fans being in awe sense, but just the interaction with people of that they're excited to read and meet authors. And I'm excited to meet authors still. That's one of the other great things about this job, is I'm meeting other authors who I really am impressed by and really like.
Well, that's our bonus show. If you didn't hear the episode where the kids discuss Spy School, you can find it and all of our shows at our website, bookclubforkids.org. And if you like the show, just subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud, and you will never miss an episode. And if you really like us, leave us a rating and a review. Book Club for Kids is funded in part by the D.C. Commission on the Arts and Humanities, an agency supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts and by listeners like you. Thanks this week to Jonathan Jensen, who composed and performed our music, and to Emma Steinkellner, who designed our logo. Thanks as well to Stuart Gibbs and to our marmots or woodchucks or whatever the heck they were for their guest appearance. We have a free newsletter for teachers, parents, and librarians full of free tips about how to turn kids into lifelong readers. You can sign up at the website, bookclubforkids.org. I'm Kitty Felde. Thanks again for listening. Where's our marmot?
He went down there. He's over there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Sampling different things.
Yes.